Canada achieves NATO's 2% defense spending target. After years of falling short, Canada officially reached the NATO benchmark of 2% of GDP on defense. Investment is exceeding 60 to 63 billion last year. Increased focus on military infrastructure. Why it matters, this milestone strengthens Canada's alliance commitments, national security posture amid global tension. So, if I remember correctly, they're actually aiming for more than 2%. 2% was the baseline. Both Europe and Canada are expected to start spending. Last I checked, wasn't the US like 4.5% of GDP? How much of the US's GDP do they spend on defense or just their military? Yeah, because I think I remember hearing like 5% was new targets, but I don't think that those really like aspirational targets, not the hard targets set by the NATO alliance. As of 2026, the United States spends approximately 3.3 to 3.4% of its gross domestic product on defense and military expenditures. So even lower than I was thinking. Well, that percentage might sound small. It's in absolute dollars, it's the largest in the world by a lot, recently crossing this significant historical threshold. Here's a breakdown of what that looks like today. I'm going to go down to the depths. Renewal of Pacific salmon strategy. Federal government announces salmon strategy, and if it's under Canada's nature strategy to protect and build wild Pacific salmon populations in British Columbia and matters. Salmon are vital to ecosystem. Okay, care too much about that. Alberta introduced Immigration Oversight Act. Alberta's government tabled Bill 26 to enhance provincial control over immigration, including employer registration for temporary foreign worker program and licensing for consultants, particularly relevant to the province's labor needs. It could reshape workforce access in energy and agriculture sectors while addressing federal provincial tension. Alberta introduces Immigration Oversight Act. I heard that Alberta introduced Immigration Oversight Act. Is there a good news video that can explain this in more detail? Let's see if we can't get like a news covering this somewhere. Oh, 22 minutes.
Good evening, I'm Nicole Weisberg. This is CTV News at 5. Tonight, a historic moment. People here in Edmonton and around the globe gather to watch NASA's mission to the moon. Not a hate crime. Police give an update on a deadly shooting on the QE2. And changing roles in the classroom. Why some say new legislation amounts to teacher censorship.
CTV.
I did not hear the story that we're here to listen to. Alberta targets immigration with new bill.
Local breaking news with Nicole Weisberg.
Just moments ago, Artemis 2 launched from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
See if I can't find talk about.
Conversation on topics and viewpoints that are unfairly silenced in classrooms. However, some teachers say the legislation amounts to censorship and adds additional stress when schools are facing more serious and immediate struggles. CTV's Jeremy Thompson reports.
I think every teacher starts off with the premise of we all have our own opinion.
In his 30-plus years teaching social studies to junior high students, Gary Nelson says the goal
would give the province information it was not received model. Well, police have made another arrest in connection with a lottery dream home.
And helping
all of those patients.
A week ago, John Maloney, a blind man approved for medical assistance in dying, went through with the MAID procedure.
Live on in these people.
World of science. Well, this is the first time in more than 50 years that astronauts are flying to the moon. Millions of people around.
I'm here. I'm actually joined by Joel Weatherly, who is a lead science presenter at the TELUS World of Science. It's a really exciting time. Tell me a little bit now that Artemis 2 is in space. What is happening now for their journey?
Is this title just a lie?
For the first time this season, the Oilers have won 4 in a row.
4 and Red Deer as well as Jasper.
Is also giving the city.
Yeah, it looks like that's just a lie. Alberta's immigration minister discussed new bill. That looks way too dry to watch. There's no way. Okay, we're just gonna go through the summary of it through AI. Key details of the act. Clearly this. Oh. 5:31. Is that a timestamp for this video?
in the union's top issues. Jeremy Thompson, CTV News, Edmonton.
The province is putting forward legislation that would give it more power over immigration. The Immigration Oversight Act would require employers to register with the province before accessing federal temporary foreign worker programs. It would also create a licensing system for immigration consultants and recruiters. Alberta's immigration minister says Bill 26 would give the province information it was not receiving from Ottawa and put up safeguards for workers.
We're taking all legal means possible, which is in my mandate letter from the Premier, to take more control over provincial immigration. And in doing so, it will support the businesses in Alberta, and it will create a more transparent process for people coming from out of country to work.
The province says these tools...
I mean, like, I see that as largely a good idea. The province, you're not getting certain information from the federal government on immigration. Should set up your own system to give you that information, because I heard somewhere do this one. I remember hearing that the Canadian government is not showing specific immigration data anymore. Can you give me more information about that? Like, I remember that they were limiting the amount of immigration information that they were collecting and providing to the public. I also think that they went back on that. I don't really remember. So hopefully this will figure it out. Thinking mode.
Rules are already in place in Saskatchewan and BC. If passed, the legislation...
So they're just introducing rules that are already in place in other in other areas.
Would be implemented over time. The UCP government is also proposing changes to legislation to implement parts of the budget. The UCP introduced Bill 27.
Okay. Okay. There has been quite a bit of noise lately about transparency in Canada's immigration reporting. While the government hasn't stopped publishing data entirely, recent shifts in how they count and share information have led to accusations that specific numbers are being obscured. Confusion generally stems from three major developments in early 2026. The incremental number, the PBO report. In late February 2026, the Parliamentary Budget Office released a report that caused a stir. It revealed that while the official immigration levels listed a target of 380,000 permanent residents per year, the government is running one-time initiatives to fast-track another 148,000 people into permanent residency over 2026 and 2027. So shouldn't that be put with the first number? The parliamentary budget officer noted that these 148,000 admissions are considered incremental and are not included in the official 380,000 figure. Critics and opposition members have argued this is a way of hiding the actual intake, make the numbers look lower and more sustainable to the public. I mean, that's exactly what it's doing, because when I was looking up immigration levels, this is the only number I came across. And so now they're telling me that number is not the whole story, and that they're letting in immigrants and they're making immigrants into permanent residents through an incremental system that is not counted in the official yearly data. Like that feels wrong. This number should be grouped with this number. Bill C-12 and data withholding. The Strengthening Canada Immigration Systems and Border Act, which passed in March 2026, changed the rules for how the federal government shares data with the provinces. Is this why we see provinces like Alberta passing these new laws? Because government's no longer giving them specific data, so they're collecting it themselves. Because that law's already in place in a couple different areas. Restricted sharing. The federal government now requires formal written information sharing agreements before it will hand over specific data to provincial governments. The Alberta dispute. This is why you likely heard Alberta's immigration minister, Joseph Scull, complaining that Ottawa was withholding data. Alberta has claimed they can't accurately plan for schools or healthcare because the feds aren't sharing the specific names, locations, or status of temporary residents to the province. Okay. Reporting cleanups, Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, has also changed how it presents its monthly data. Blending categories in some reports, the IRCC has stopped breaking down specific express entry draws, the Canadian experience class, and instead groups them all under a broad federal high skilled category. This makes it harder to see exactly which types of workers are prioritized. Excluded temporary residents. For the first time, the government set targets for temporary resident arrivals. They exclude certain groups like asylum seekers, permit extensions, and season workers, those public targets. This has led to the perception that the official target doesn't reflect the total number of people actually residing in the country. Okay. So recently they've started making the data unreliable. The data that they provide unreliable. They're listing new permanent residents into like different categories so that they don't show up on official figures. They're restricting data from the provinces, and they're even like excluding certain groups from their targets to make their targets look better. It seems like the Canadian government is attempting to obscure data in a lot of different ways. Why are they taking this approach? Let's see. Where we want to look at the US, some US stories next. See if this is the government shift towards more curated or obscure data reporting in 2026 is generally seen as a strategic balancing act between three competing forces: public anxiety over housing, economic necessity, and a tightening of federal control. According to policy analysis and recent governing briefings, here are the primary reasons they are taking this approach. Managing the headline versus the reality. I mean, like, that doesn't backfire ever. The central challenge for the government, currently led by Prime Minister Mark Carney following the transition from the Trudeau era, is the political sensitivity of high numbers, the optics of stabilization. By setting the official target at 380,000, but moving 148,000 others through incremental initiatives, government can claim they are stabilizing or reducing immigration levels to ease the 56% of Canadians who now feel levels are too high. So they're basically lying. They made up an incremental initiatives category. They could lie to the Canadian people. Whoa. The statistical side door. A major part of the 2026 strategy is transitioning people who are already here, temporary workers and students, into permanent residents. Because these people already have apartments and jobs, the government argues they don't add new pressure to the housing market, even though they still count towards the total immigration numbers. I don't know how the system works well enough to really comment on that one. The housing first narrative. The government has explicitly tied immigration levels to housing supply. The 160,000 unit goal. The official stance is that by tightening reporting and reducing the new arrival count, they can close the housing supply gap by roughly 670,000 units by 2027. But like, so if they're tightening reporting, it's not actually tightening the numbers. data as a buffer. By blending categories and being less specific about where people are settling, the federal government avoids direct daily accountability for local spikes in rent or healthcare wait times in cities. I don't see any of this. I don't see how hiding the data is going to make anything better. It's only going to make things worse. But it'll make things worse for the next guy, I guess, right? That's apparently their goal. If I had to guess, federal provincial jurisdictional friction, the passage of Bill C-12 in March formalized a gatekeeper role for the federal government. Information is leveraged by requiring formal written agreements before sharing data with provinces. Ottawa ensures that provinces can't use federal data to embarrass the feds and media regarding infrastructure failures. Okay, the security justification. Officially, the government claims these restrictions are to protect the privacy and integrity of the asylum and immigration system, preventing the misuse of personal data by third parties or provincial aid. Shifting economic metrics. The Carney government has pivoted the national conversation from total GDP, which grows when you add more people, to GDP per capita, which measures individual wealth. I mean, like, this is the one we always should have been looking at. By focusing on high-skilled blended categories, the government is attempting to prioritize quality over quantity. However, critics argue that by obscuring the specifics of these categories, it becomes harder for the public to verify if the arrivals actually have the high-demand skills like healthcare or trades. The government claims they do. The critical view. Many economists argue that the government is essentially inflation adjusting their immigration data, trying to make a high intake reality feel like a low intake policy to maintain social license while still feeding the labor markets. Does this lack of transparency change how you're looking at the upcoming provincial referendum on immigration? When is Alberta's provincial referendum on immigration? I've heard that's coming up. They were doing a referendum and they're going to do a bunch of questions. October. That's a long way. I'm not going to remember that. 4 of the 9 questions focused. We'll read these 4. See, I want to get 4 of the 9 questions focused on shifting immigration power from Ottawa to Edmonton. Constitutional question. Your thinking model limit. Okay. Gemini doesn't give me a whole lot of questions. Who else we got? Chat GPT. Go. What are the 9 questions on Alberta's referendum that's coming up in October? Let's have a look. Now, 4 of these related to immigration, right? Non-constitutional questions. Increase provincial control over immigration. Do you support the government of Alberta taking increased control over immigration for the purpose of decreasing immigration to more sustainable levels, prioritizing economic immigrants, and giving Albertans first priority on new employment opportunities? Absolutely. Yes. Eligibility for provincially funded programs. Do you support the government of Alberta introducing a law mandating that only Canadian citizens, permanent residents, individuals with an Alberta approved immigration status will be eligible for provincial funded programs such as healthcare, education, and social services? I mean, I don't know why it would be anything other than that. I didn't even realize it could be something other than that until I saw the question. So are you saying a random person come across the border and they can get healthcare, education, and other social services? What is that? I assume that's how it is because how that's question. So in Canada, does an illegal immigrant get healthcare, education, and other social services? In Canada, access to public services like healthcare, education depends heavily on your legal status in the country, and people without status generally are not entitled to the same benefits as citizens or permanent residents. Here's how it breaks down. So if they don't get it, oh, hello. You got a chatter. So if they don't get it, why are they putting this question in there? Using a law maintaining that only Canadian citizens, permanent residents, Alberta approved immigration status will be eligible for provincial funded. Like I agree with the question, but why is it here? Eligibility for provincial funded programs. If illegal immigrants already don't get social services, why is the eligibility for provincially funded programs a question on the Alberta's referendum? I don't speak Arabic. There's no way I can translate. That not go through. Let's see. The short answer. The referendum question is not about undocumented immigrants. It's about restricting access for legal temporary residents, a group that does currently receive public services in Alberta and across Canada. Here's the breakdown. Undocumented immigrants already can't access most services. The referendum question targets legal temporary residents. Key phrase in the Alberta referendum question is only Canadian citizens. The wording is specifically aimed at people who are legally in Canada on temporary status, such as worker permits, international students, temporary foreign workers, visitors who overstayed but still have documentation, refugee claimants. Okay, so that changes my opinion on the question, because illegals definitely shouldn't be getting access to those services. But if you hold a worker's permit, like, or an international student, I believe you should. But I believe as a province, we should express more control over the international students and worker permit holders that come to the province. But I still believe that they should get those services. So Increase provincial control over them? Yes. Eligibility for provincially funded programs? How are they wording that? Like, I believe they should still get the services. Do you support the government introducing a law amending? So no, I would not support that. Yeah. Translate to Arabic. I think I'm good there. Hard enough for me to keep track of this just in English, I'm afraid. Residency requirement for social supports. Assuming that all Canadian citizens and permanent residents continue to qualify for social support programs as they do now, do you support the government of Alberta introducing a law requiring all individuals with a non-permanent legal immigration status to reside in Alberta for at least 12 months before qualifying for any provincially funded social program? So now they're asking, would you be okay requiring them to be here for 12 months before they provide social program? So this is speaking about the same group, right? This is speaking about legal temporary residents. So work permit holders, international students, temporary foreign workers. Assuming that all Canadian citizens and permanent residents continue to qualify for social support programs as they do now, do you support the government introducing a law requiring all individuals with a non-permanent legal immigration status? Non-permanent illegal immigration status. To what? Non-permanent legal immigration in Canada refers to people who are legally in Canada but are not citizens or permanent residents. These are individuals who have temporary status, usually with an expiry date. Temporary for, oh, it's going into more detail here. So this is the same group, people in Canada on work permits, international students, visitors, tourists with extended stay, refugee claimants. So this one I would not support. Like, what's the point of not providing them services for 12 months when they get here? I would like increased control and knowledge over who is coming, but I like holding services from them for 12 months just seems pointless. Either they wait the 12 months and then use the services, then what? Like, they don't have a kid that goes to school or something? They can't go into the hospital? Oh, that probably. So I'd probably be a no on this one too. Oh, charging fees for health/education, assuming that all Canadian citizens and residents continue to qualify for public health care and education. Alberta charge. Do you support the government of Alberta charging a reasonable fee or permit to individuals with non-permanent immigration status living in Alberta for their and their family use of the healthcare and education system? Again, I would probably right now say no. I really want the first one. Like, give us the first one. These are things that you would do if you don't get the first one. Increase provincial control over immigration. Proof of citizenship to vote. See, this is something that the US is doing too. They wanting to get like an ID to vote. Do you support the government of Alberta introducing a law requiring individuals to provide proof of citizenship, such as passport, birth certificate, or citizenship card, to vote in Alberta provincial election? I mean, like, I don't see any harm in that. I think I'd support that. Like, I don't think it's a big issue, non-citizens voting, just because like the crime has an outsized like the negative effect of getting caught for that crime outsized for the actual effect you're doing massively. But I got no problem supporting. I got a passport, I got a birth certificate. Both of those would be easy. I'd actually want to. I'll probably look into that one a bit more because the U.S. is going through it, so there's guaranteed that there's a lot of good evidence for both sides. But we got to what, October 19th, so we still got a while. So I haven't made my mind up. No, 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 yes. If we can't get this, then these ones might change. Like charging fees, if we can't increase our control over our immigration, charging fees is a way you can increase your control over immigration. But ideally, you just get increased control. Okay, constitutional questions. Province selects judges. Do you support the government of Alberta working with the government's other willing provinces to amend the Canadian Constitution to have provincial governments, and not the federal government, select the judges appointed to provincial king bench and appeal courts? So moving the power to select judges from the federal government to the province. No, I got no idea. Generally, taking power away from the federal government. Provincial governments are the same way. I don't know. Ideally, doesn't doesn't the US have like justices that are elected? Does the US elect judges? And if so, is that a better system than appointing them? Because I remember there's this weird thing where you'll see advertisement for a judge position. You're like, what is this craziness that I'm watching here? It's a judge trying to get elected in a specific area. Yes, many parts of the United States do elect judges, but not all. Whether it's better is debated. It depends on value you think a justice system should prioritize: independency versus accountability, expertise versus democratic legitimacy. Oh, yeah, there's so much to think about when it comes to judges. US one. Does the US elect judges? Yes, in most states. Okay, two. Is electing judges a better system than appointing them? There are strong arguments for and against each model. Democratic accountability. Judges make decisions that affect citizens' lives. Elections let the public remove judges who show bias, misuse power, behave unethically. Transparency, because judges must campaign, they typically state their views publicly, expand how they see the law, explain how they see the law, answer questions about their philosophy. I like all of that. Prevents political elites from controlling the justicari. Under an appointment system, the government of the day has enormous power in judicial selection. Elections distribute control to the public. Arguments against electing judges. Judges must campaign, which means raising money. This is the biggest criticism. Campaign donations often come from lawyers who will appear before the judge, businesses with court interests, political parties. Oh, both sides make sense. This creates the appearance or reality of conflicting interests. Public voters don't usually know justical issues. Judges deal with evidentiary rules, sentencing standards, administrative law, vote for familiar names, vote party lines. Basically, the public doesn't really understand what a judge needs to do to be a competent judge. So having them select a judge, you can't you can't like some kind of influencer as a judge. Judges may become tough on crime for electoral reasons. Research in the US shows sentences become harsher near election time. Why are you going to prison for 20 years? Oh, I was doing a crime and it was near the election time of this judge. So, boom, my 1 year sentence is a 20-year sentence. I can see both sides. Oh, I like the accountability to the public, but the public doesn't know about judge things. Undermining judicial independence, judges should be able to make unpopular decisions. Protecting constitutional rights often requires going against public opinion. Elections can discourage this. I think the public is what constitutional rights. That makes sense. Which system do experts think is better? Okay, here we go. Most legal scholars argue that appointments produce a more independent and qualified judiciary, but acknowledge appointments concentrate power in the hands of political leaders. Transparency is often weaker. There can be elitism or lack of representation. Most polls of judges themselves show appointed judges overwhelmingly oppose judicial elections. Many elected judges with their states switch to appointments. So they largely think that the appointment is better as long as the appointment process is fair. And if you had the states, let's go to the bottom line. The US does elect many judges. Federal judges are appointed, like in Canada. Electing judges increases accountability but reduces independence. Appointing judges increases independence but reduces democratic control and transparency. Whether it's better depends on which value you prioritize. Let's go all the way back up here. So, province selects judges. I think I'd support that. If the provinces, government working with governments of other willing provinces, I mean, we'll all be willing, right, to have provincial governments and not the federal government select the justices appointed to the appeals court and the King's Bench. I would agree with that. Like, issue with selected judges, like the concentration of political power. If you move that from the central federal government, provincial government, and I think there's more accountability. Federal government can't just put people that agree with them into important positions. Okay. Abolishing the federal Senate. Yes. Gone. Good idea. Do you support the government of Alberta working with the governments of other willing provinces to amend the Canadian Constitution to abolish unelected federal Senate? Absolutely. Please get rid of it. Also, the whole, what's it called? Take it sweet time, is it? What is it called? There. So the representative of the royal family that needs to sign all these things, the law, like prime minister should be signing them in law. It's largely a ceremonial position. I believe it's a ceremonial position that we no longer need. Also, there are still places that like you have to like swear loyalty to the royal family when you're being appointed to a position. I want all that gone too. Like, let's make the federal government more efficient at what it's supposed to do, which is represent the people of Canada. So I agree with that one as well. Okay. Opt out of federal programs without losing funding. Do you support the government of Alberta working with the governments of other willing provinces to amend the Canadian Constitution to allow provinces to opt out of federal programs that intrude on provincial jurisdiction, healthcare, education, and social services, without a province losing any of the associated federal funding? What? So you want to opt out of the program, but then you get all the benefits of the program? So, I mean, like, something seems wrong there. If you opt out of a program, you usually don't get to keep the benefits. In question 8 on the Alberta referendum that's coming, it says to opt out of federal programs without losing funding. How does that work? Won't you lose funding if you opt out of a federal program? Here we go. Great question. Under the current constitution, a province will lose federal funding if it opts out of a federal program. That's exactly why question 8 proposes a constitutional amendment, because this rule can't be changed by ordinary legislation. How it works today, provinces can opt out of federal programs, but they opt out, they lose the federal related funding. If you don't participate in the federal program, you don't get the money for it. Makes sense. Health transfers come with conditions. Childcare funding comes with conditions. What question 8 is proposing. Alberta wants to be allowed to opt out of federal programs and still keep all the federal funding for those areas. I don't think that's your decision, right? Because Alberta could ignore federal conditions run its own programs however it wants, and Ottawa would be constitutionally required to send Alberta the money. I don't see this one happening. That is not possible under today's constitution, which is why a constitutional amendment is required. Why Alberta wants this change? Okay. Main argument Alberta government presents: more provincial autonomy. Alberta wants control over programs like healthcare rules, social services, childcare, pharmacare, dental care, housing programs. Belief that Alberta contributes more than it gets back. Alberta often argues that it sends more in federal taxes than it receives in transfers. It does. Opposition to federal strings attached funding. The UCP government urges that federal conditions limit Alberta's ability to design its own program. So, Alberta thinks it can do it better, and it doesn't like the conditions federal government is attaching to all the money. But at the same time, like that's kind of that's like what the federal government's supposed to do, right? Like you're better off trying to change rules the federal government puts on this stuff by getting a better federal government. This would effectively create a rule like federal money is owed to a province no matter what, even if the province refuses to meet national standards. That question's a lot more tricky. Opt out of federal programs without losing funding. Like I would like if the province had more control in these areas, but I don't know if I could support that. Like a change like that should come from the federal government. Best way to do that is just to vote in a better federal government. Puts the conditions and makes the conditions better on things. I don't know. I'll probably have to look into that one more. Pros and cons. Okay, so let's go through. I would support this. If we got this, then I would not support that. But I'd be far more supportive of these things if we did not get that. Proof of citizenship to vote. Kind of on the fence on. I generally land on the side of why not? Like, why is it necessary at the same time? So I generally would support that one. Province select judges, I'd support. Abolish the federal Senate, absolutely. I would go a little further. There's a couple other things in there we could probably get rid of. What is the individual called who signs bills into law for the royal family in Canada? I just want to know the name of that. Governor General. Doesn't really have any power, like it's just lieutenant governor. So they have them at the provincial level too. Oh, I know this is all left over from when we first made our democracy. Come on, guys, this should have been patched out like a long time ago. Governor General. Yeah, get rid of the Senate and the Governor General. Opt out of federal programs without losing money. On the fence, this one. I'd personally just like to see a reduction in the equalization payments. Personally. Anything about equalization? Let's get to the final one. Priority for provincial law over federal law. Do you support the government of Alberta working with the governments of other willing provinces to amend the Canadian Constitution to better protect provincial rights from federal interference by giving a provincial law dealing with provincial or shared areas of constitutional direct jurisdiction priority over federal laws when the province's laws and federal laws, giving the provinces more power, essentially. I don't know, like the federal law is so much harder to change and to make relevant for specific areas. Like we're jurisdictions, shared areas of constitutional jurisdiction. Like, I think there's scenarios where the province should be prioritized, but I also feel there's scenarios where the federal government should be prioritized. So that's a really hard one. Because it would be like a case by case basis. I'd probably say no to that. Much nuance there. And it can lead to some really weird outcomes no matter what. In the referendum that's coming up in Alberta, I didn't see anything about equalization. Was there any question that specifically related to this? Short answer, no. Not include questions specifically about equalization, but there is one question that indirectly touches the equalization system. Unlike equalization, which directly asks voters whether equalization should be constitution, contains no question that explicitly mentions equalization. Federal transfers, so there's no yes, no question. One question does indirectly relate to this. Question 8. Many provinces opt out of federal programs without losing associated federal funding. Indirectly affects the logic of federal transfers. Why? Because the equalization program containing national minimum standards of public services. Provinces could take the money, ignore federal standards, run programs however they want, then the equalization and transfer system would function very differently. While question 8 isn't officially about equalization, it does challenge current federal provincial fiscal framework. Ottawa's conditions on funding, national program standards, but it does not propose eliminating or modifying equalization. Alberta already held a referendum on equalization in 2021 and won't repeat immediately. Equalization can't be changed by provincial referendum alone. It requires Parliament, the Senate, 7 provinces with 50% of Canada's population. 750 rule. UCP structures the referendum creation autonomy, not fiscal. What was the full questioning? Opt-out referendum without losing. That's a hard one too. Like having specific standards set out for them to having conditions on funding.